You can have a seat, put everything down. This is going to sound very demanding from the pastor speaking today. My name's Ron. Put everything down. Don't touch anybody. Hug anybody, look at anybody. If you're willing, close your eyes. Don't whistle. Don't make a noise. And just sit for a minute. That was about 30 seconds. You can open your eyes. You can look at me. What was that like for you? What is it like for you to be quiet? To be silent? To be maybe it might have felt like alone? Like what comes up for you when that happens? That's just 30 seconds with a group of people around us. What do you tend to do when you're alone or it's quiet like that? What sense of God do you have when that happens? Maybe it reminds you of time out as a child or as a husband. Punishment, loneliness, abandonment. I got to get away from this feeling, whatever it is. I want to avoid the thoughts that are coming up in my mind and the bad that comes with it. For me, it's often, and my nature and personality is that I'm super distracted. One of the spiritual formation gurus, Henry Nouwen, says when he practices solitude and silence, it's like monkeys in a banana tree in his head. That I understand. The squirrel, the old movie, we brought it up before. And this matters because in your notes, just that first whole thought for us, this matters to us because many have said we live in a culture, an age of distraction. Some articles have been written, I think the Washington Post, others in the past, many have written that we are actually in an epidemic of distraction. Now, a lot of this started at a rapid pace. It began before. It's just getting more rapid as we go along. In 2007, what was coming out in 2007? Many of us, I have one in my pocket right now because I'm going to use it in a minute. The iPhone. And it just was a rapid pace, 07 on. Now, it had been worked on for years, announced for years. But man, 07 on, everything just rapid. Social media just takes a giant rise. It just becomes rampant. And that's when these discussions were happening even more. We are in an epidemic. We live in a culture of distraction. And one of the things that has happened, a bunch of things have happened. You may be able to point some out in your own life. I'd ask you to evaluate that. But this creates an inability to fully be present in many ways, to fully love. We start living superficially, and it's really hard to be present not only with just one another, but with God and with life, period. It feels like we're in a battle when it comes to distraction. One of the things as Christians, those that we say follow Jesus, and this series, Apprenticing with Him, is that I can't recognize or hear God's voice very well in this age. One is because there are so many opinions out there, and if I listen to them all, I am confused. Distraction begins to rule in our life And for me, maybe you can evaluate it. Why does it do that for you? Because it often will help me from feeling, especially the negative feelings. If I can be distracted, then I don't have to think about all the stuff that's going on in my life. Helps me from feeling lonely, being afraid. Maybe it's some of the brokenness that you're battling. Then I don't have to be present to it. I can just get rid of it. Distraction comes too because there's that fear of missing out. I mean, you know that little term that's old now. It probably dates, my age. But so I gotta constantly be looking at my phone. Most likely right now, if I just say, put your phone down, man. Can you give me, I even want to pick mine up because I want to know what the score of the game. I want to know what's going on. And so what happens is, and we'll look at this today, is the distraction in this world can keep me from looking at the truth of my heart and soul. And that matters. We need to do that. Distraction robs me of presence, being in the now with God and myself and with others. Some have said, and I would agree, at least maybe you can evaluate that we are addicted to distraction. And here's one of the things that I was working on during the week is that distraction can lead to disillusionment. Like I can't even see straight. I don't know what's right or wrong. That's rampant in the world today. And then if we let distraction go and we become disillusioned about life, about things, then what happens is it creates a distortion of the truth. Truth isn't truth anymore. Truth is what you make it, what you think it is, what they say it is, what they say it is, what that says it is. And then many of us will think through that we begin to live as our deceptive selves. We're not even living a real life. And here's what happens. It causes an external distraction in my life, externally, but worse, it's internal. So then we deal with what we'll talk about today, a distracted, disillusioned soul. That whole being, all of who I am. We must take care of our souls. And that's kind of some grounding principle for this whole series. Two scriptures have come up constantly for me in this series. I'll repeat parts of them again today. One is Mark 8:34 through 37. When Jesus says, hey, if you want to follow me, take up your cross, follow me, give everything up, all the stuff he says. And he says, stop trying to gain the whole world. And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world? But you lose your own soul. And then he'll say it's a rhetorical question, is anything, but you need to ask it, is anything worth your soul? And so he'll invite us to something. Jesus will say in Matthew 11:28 through 30, we've read this so many times, it is probably just a grounding scripture for Journey as a church. He says in Matthew 11:28 through 30, come to me, you come to me. This is key as we look at solitude. All of you who are weary, burdened, broken down, beat up by religion, I will give you rest. You take my yoke upon you. You learn from me. Why? Because I'm gentle and humble in heart. And you will find rest for your souls. Not just your external life. We need rest there. But your internal soul. So this week we're talking about solitude. We long for solitude. In honor of Mother's Day, a mom wrote this note to her children and posted it on the bathroom door. If mom is in this bathroom, you are not allowed to, number one, knock unless the house is on fire, someone is bleeding and or dead. Number two, you're not allowed to scream questions at me if the shower is running. Hot tip, I can't hear you. Number three, Wait for me. Wait for me within inches of the door and then yell at me when you get slammed in the face like it's my fault. Number 4, send me notes of any kind, especially the ones with those check boxes. Ask yourself the question before knocking, can I survive 2 minutes without mom? Yes or no? You can put that on the door for your husbands too. Some of you moms did not mind the silence in the very beginning because you're like, I long for this. Then this was just sent to me by one of our people. I thought it was good, Dana. Oh, no, it's not against Dana or nothing like that, but Dana sent it. An old, tired-looking dog wandered into a woman's yard. She could tell from looking at him that he had a good home. He followed her inside, down the hall, and promptly fell asleep. 2 hours later, he went to the door, and she let him out. The next day, he came back, resumed his position, and napped for a couple of hours. This went on for a week. Curious, the woman penned this note to his collar. Every afternoon, your dog comes to my house for a nap. The next day, the dog showed up with a note that read, he lives in a home with 10 children. Apparently, he needs some quiet time. Can I come with him tomorrow? Yes, wow. All right. We need solitude. Its companion is silence. We won't talk about that as much today. What is solitude in your notes? It's a moment of intentional time in the quiet to be alone with God. The invitation from Jesus was stay in pace with me and give space to listen and hear God speak. This matters. Quite simply, it's just being with God. That's a key word, being with God. It's giving my full and undivided attention to Him. This is a core practice. As we look at 9 practices, we've already looked at a few: Sabbath, prayer. These things. The belief is that this core practice, this one, solitude, it holds all the others. It's a container discipline. Solitude amplifies the other disciplines. This matters because you'll see in all the disciplines there is an element of solitude and silence that matters to the rest because you need it to be able to hear clearly. So even with prayer, as we're doing our class, it's awesome. 20 plus of us come in. If you still really want to join, come. Give me about $50, I'll let you in. No, it's free. It's free. It's Tuesday nights. But it amplifies the others. It's very important, very necessary. Bill Gaultier, he is a president, him and his wife, of an organization called Soul Shepherding. I follow them concerning spiritual formation. He says that solitude and silence, they offer an opportunity, it's key, to focus on your intimacy with Jesus, to unhook from your daily responsibilities and the people you interact with in order to attend to the Lord alone. So important. In solitude, we don't try to make anything happen. All the other disciplines, the practices, there's an element of doing something, not bad, but doing something. This one says, you're not coming, you don't need to do anything. Be with God. And here's the tough part, though. This is what makes it hard, at least for me. You evaluate you. We just bring our naked self to the Lord to be with Him. Does not mean get naked and go to Him. So you could do that. I'm not saying, but it's not what I'm saying. It's hard because we're exposed. I don't have to pretend. Henry Nouwen will say, it's like entering into the furnace of transformation. Like a furnace. The real Ron can come out, the real you. God already knows. You can sit with Him naked and exposed. It's a big deal. We don't get that in life a lot. Can't do that with people enough. go to a therapist, pay some money. With God, it's free, but it can be hard. He sees it all. The beauty of him still loving you is shocking, amazing, majestic. Here's just a big kind of overarching thing that solitude does. In your notes, it creates space for God. Think subtraction, not addition. Stripping away, not putting on. It's creating space for soul care. I have nowhere to go. I have nothing to do, nothing I have to say, no interaction that needs to happen. I can just be in God's presence. I can experience intimacy with God, something I long for but seems at times elusive, revealing those things that distract me, the disillusionments that cloud my thinking, the distortions of truth that God needs to shed light into. He then can expose dark areas of my life that I have kept hidden from everyone else, and he can speak into them with grace and love and discipline, and shine his light and bring healing that we need, especially as we enter into prayer or Sabbath or these things that matter. And as we move forward, they'll matter even more. I am before God at that moment, exposed, naked, with no props, no masks. It's me and God. You can write these down. They are not in your notes, but all this about creating space. What does it do? It creates space for God to go deeper, to do his deeper work, to form and shape me into what he desires me to be. And I need that. I put up masks and pretended for so long. It's a lot for God to just strip it away. And it hurts sometimes, but it is worth it. It creates space so that I can see clearly, know myself, know my true self, and be with God. 30 years ago, probably, it was around that time, I went to Israel for the first time. I've been 30 sometimes. Don't even remember how many at this point. My first trip, you wouldn't be able to do it today. I know you probably can't all see this. It's just a cool looking bottle that I found. I got one of my water bottles in Israel. We went over to the Sea of Galilee area where Jesus supposedly, cast demons into pigs and all that stuff. We went down. We got to get into the water. I was thrilled, exhausted, didn't know where I was at, what I was doing. Never been there before. I took one of my water, plastic things. I filled it with all this silt, dirt. In my mind, this is 2,000-year-old dirt that Jesus swam in and did, I know it's not, but I look at it and think of that. And I duct taped it up, and I don't know how they let me into the States with it, but they did. Probably couldn't do it today, but I've never tried. And I've got this bottle, corked it up, and here it is 30 years later. Every time, it's all clear right now. There's a little bit going on. There's some dirt in there, and grime and probably stuff from, 30 years ago that just somebody threw in there. But every time it would sit on my desk or on a table in there, every time somebody would come in the office, you know what they would do? They'd grab it. It's the first thing you do when you got a bottle of water like this with stuff in it. You shake it. I'm like, you ruined my Sea of Galilee. I don't know if you could see that, but it's filthy. Great. When I create space for God to do his deeper work, I begin to see clearly. But let me tell you what happens first. When I go into time with him, even if it's just for a few minutes, that's what happens. Shaken up. I can't see clearly. I'll tell you why even more in a little bit. That's what the scary thing is, because I don't want you to think you're going to walk into this 5 minutes with God if you take it, or 1 minute, or 30 seconds, or you want to go for an hour. But man, everything comes up. The monkeys in the banana tree start just going nuts. I'm just going to spend time with Jesus right now. This is going to be so awesome. No distractions. My phone's in the other room. I turned it off. Nothing's going on. If you got kids, that's like impossible. You got to leave the country to have that happen, right? I have 6 dogs. It can be a nightmare sometimes. What are you doing? Stuff under the doors, right? All that stuff. You got all that too. And all of a sudden, what's worse, it's not that. It's here. It's here. It's just shake it. Why am I thinking about that right now? Some of the nastiest thoughts, the most horrible thoughts when I'm just trying to spend time with Jesus. Sometimes I'm reminded from him. It feels like he's saying, Ron, this has to happen. You've been shoving that down for so long. The only way to get healing is I got to stir it up. We're going to start working it out. I'm going to bring people into your life. We're going to do this. Why? Because I love you. That's why solitude's important. A little bit once in a while matters. Because we're so used to distraction, shoving those things aside, thinking we have the power to take care of some of the deepest wounds and hurts. Even in this room today, I understand that just the term Mother's Day brings up some tough stuff for some of you. Loss and brokenness, shame, guilt. And it's hard to say, sit in that for a minute. Know that God loves you, weeps with you. He doesn't rush past it. He is not the one shoving it down. He is the one who wants to come in and love you. But it's tough. But as you do it more, and it takes a while sometimes, everything begins to settle and you can see clearly now. I need that. Creates space then to hear God's voice. I can hear it above all the others. They did a study, the World Health Organization in Europe, and they talked about noise pollution being a major problem, just that alone, and how damaging it was to society, to life, to culture, to kids. Because silence sometimes can be so loud. And it's not noise pollution like it's just like I can hear right now. Like when I'm quiet, I can hear this vent up here and, I can hear things. But as it becomes more clear, God's voice becomes a little louder. Wow. Silence and solitude can interrupt the noise of our lives to give us an opportunity, God an opportunity to speak to our loneliness, our longings, our pain, our disillusionments, our distractions, our worry, and he begins to reveal his wonder, who he is, what he does, how he feels about you. Can be intimidating, and it is challenging because it is a place for all areas of life to be confronted and addressed, to listen to the depths of my soul. But solitude creates space for me to slow down, stop. Sometimes like it's just, have you ever gone somewhere like we're entering a beautiful time in Southern Oregon. It's gorgeous out. You walk outside and it's quiet in the morning and you look and if you have a shot of Mount McLaughlin, the snow's there, it's beautiful. It's beautiful, the lakes are full. People tend to be a little more happier because the sun's out, although the 90-degree weather God could have paused that for a little bit longer. 70-ish, Sometimes, maybe you're like me, it's just, you walk out and you just everything's there. It's not gone away. But you just take a deep breath. For a moment, I see clearly. I hear clearly. God's voice is a little louder. Because now I'm creating space to just simply be for a moment, to be alert and attentive to the fact that I'm overstimulated and exhausted. God's beginning to clarify now, pulling things into focus, reorienting me back to what matters most. I hear him say a little louder, I love you. Man, you're my beloved child. And as I do this more, I become more attentive to where God is working, and now I'm willing to join him in what he's doing. And in that, we create space for him to affirm my true identity. I get rid of the scaffolding around me, and all the stuff that I use to keep myself propped up and look good. And the real person can come out. Henry Nouwen says, get rid of your scaffolding. And it creates space then to know God, his true identity, who he is, his loving grace. Psalm 46:10, we'll come back to this in a minute. It's key. Memorize it right now. You're going to use it. It's an easy one to remember. Be still and know that I am God. I love how Eugene Peterson says it in the Message. Step out of the traffic. Take a long, loving look at me, your high God. It's beautiful. Step out of the traffic. Be still and know that I am God. Now, you want to know where this story, if you were a Jewish person, any man, woman, child, you would have instantly gone back to a story in the Old Testament, further back in the Old Testament in Exodus chapter 14. God miraculously has freed the Jews from the Egyptians. They were slaves. Through a process, working it out, he got them out. And as they flee, they come to the Red Sea. In front of them is water. Behind them, Pharaoh and his army are ready to pounce. They realize, we made a mistake. We let all of our slaves go. We must go get them. And the people are freaking out. Water. Enemy. Moses says, God says through him, do not be afraid. Stand firm. You will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. So when the psalm is read, they think of this story. The Egyptians you see today that are coming, you will never see again. In just a moment, that water is going to open up and God's going to create dry land for you to go through. But here's what you need to do. The Lord, he will fight for you. You need only to be still. There is a moment to work hard, but there are moments when I need to be with Jesus. See him work. So they would think of that story and they would be amazed. Jesus' invitation in all of this, just quickly, won't teach this stuff, but he lays down how important this is in his own life for us with his disciples. And now 2,000 years later for us. He invites us to solitude. He did it himself because he is more concerned with the sustainment of our spiritual life, our souls, than the distraction of outward success. And we are driven and distracted by that. He would show that yes, we may still be busy, but we should never be disconnected. He had a lot to do, but he was never in a hurry. He would not become disconnected or distracted and hurry past the Father, his people, or abandon his purpose. He often, this one word was key, withdrew. Constantly engaging people and often withdrawing. It would express his humanity and the necessity of it. It would show his dependence upon God the Father. It was one of the means, it seems to me, that his ministry came out of. Otherwise, we become ineffective and depleted. Some of you may be living there right now. It seems, as I look at the Gospels, and I want to dig deeper into this, that solitude and prayer often precede and follow a great move of God. It is the power needed for the next thing that comes out of the crucible of what was the previous thing. Real quickly, Matthew 4:1. Jesus led by the Spirit into the wilderness, the beginning of his ministry, to be tempted there by the devil. Went out into the wilderness, and that wilderness represents that solitary place. The enemy attacked Jesus after 40 days in that wilderness in prayer, silence and solitude. It's interesting, when Jesus was at his strongest. Luke 5:16. The disciples all went and did these amazing things. His power spread all over. Vast crowds were coming to hear him preach. He healed diseases. And again, they're just doing amazing, amazing things. But it says that Jesus often withdrew to the wilderness, that solitary place, for prayer. Mark 6, 30, 31. He's rejected in his hometown in Mark 6. One of his best friends and relatives, John the Baptist, dies. He's beheaded. His disciples will find some success. They will feed 5,000 plus people. He will walk on water. And they return to him after their big ministry tour. And you know what he would tell them right after that? Let's go off by ourselves to a quiet place and rest a while. Mark 14, 32 through 36. We know that sometimes solitude is even found in the presence of others, yet separate. Jesus is about ready to die on the cross. He's going to be beaten and punished for our sins. But it is a great, hard, painful thing to do. And he would take his disciples, a few of them, and go into the Garden of Gethsemane there in Jerusalem at night, and he would say, "My soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." And here it is. With the presence of his people, it says he even found this separate solitude time. He went off a little farther, fell to the ground, and prayed that if it were possible, the awful hour awaiting him might pass him by. "Abba, Father," he cried out, "everything is possible for you. Please take this cup of suffering away from me." And it's in that, you could say, crucible of suffering and solitude that he found the strength to go. "Yet I want your will to be done, not mine." He would show the importance of solitude, being with the Father, expressing the truth of where he was at, what he was thinking, and laying it out to him. Mark 1, 35 through 42. Before daybreak the next morning, Jesus got up and went out to an isolated place to pray. And of course, here's what happens for all of us. Later, Simon and the others went out to find him. When they found him, they said, "Everyone's looking for you." But Jesus replied, "We must go on to other towns as well, and I will preach to them too. That is why I came." We learn that when we go into solitude, when we spend time with the Father, we become better at seeing clearly, hearing clearly what our purpose is. Otherwise, we get disillusioned, distracted. The truth is distorted. And we will easily go, "Hey, what? I've said this before to you many times. My fans are calling for me. I must go see them then." And we get off, sidetracked, fear of missing out. So what do? Let me give you some practical things, and then I want to wrap up with at least giving you an example of something you could actually do in solitude. The little doing part, even though it's not all about doing, it's about being. We, over the weeks, have and will continue to look at these spiritual disciplines, these rhythms of spiritual practices. Be reminded, this one as well, it is not a barometer of godliness. Because you do it a little more than someone else or do it at all, you're not better than them. It's not that kind of thing. They are not ways to compare yourself to others. They're not ways to earn favor with God. This is not extra credit. "Hey, God, I did 5 minutes of solitude this week. My wife only did 1. It's not what they are. It's not religion, rules. It's all about relationship. And we have said over and over again, it's why we're doing the classes, the current one on prayer, 3 things. It's to be with Jesus. We're learning how to be with Jesus so that we can become like Jesus, not Jesus, like Jesus. And so then we can do what Jesus did, what he's taught us to do. So what do? Number 1, in your notes, set aside intentional time for solitude. It will not happen. You need to put yourself in a position where you have to stop and listen. Now, this can look many ways. It could be in the presence of people, in your cubicle. Is there still cubicles out there? Does that happen? In your truck, probably my cubicle. Take a walk. Go to the bathroom. But you have to intentionally put yourself in a position where you can take time for solitude. It will not just happen in this age of distraction. Think not what you're going to do, but what you're not going to do. Because this is about being instead of doing, listening, letting all this stuff in our lives settle down so that we can hear properly. It's an act of resistance to build a relationship with God. John Ortberg would say that solitude is the one place where we can gain freedom from the forces of society that will otherwise relentlessly mold us. One of my favorite writers on spiritual formation, Ruth Haley Barton, read a ton of her books, says that solitude and silence are not, in the end, about success and failure. They are about showing up and letting God do the rest. They're not an end in themselves. They are merely a means through which we regularly make ourselves available to God for the intimacy of relationship and for the work of transformation that only God can accomplish. Which means this, number 2, you got to show up and open up. I wanted to put shut up in there, but that didn't sound real spiritual. But I said it. You can write that down. It's a little extra. Show up and open up. Solitude is me coming to God just as I am. We said it earlier, my naked self. Here I am in all my glory, Lord, and some of it is not good. I bring to you, God, my fear of being alone, my temptations in sin, my brokenness from the past, my struggles that I'm having right now. One of the Psalms you could read in preparation for it is Psalm 139, all about how God knows you, created you, loves you deeply, and in it you ask God to reveal your heart in the midst of distraction. The last couple verses say, search me, O God. What a great prayer. God, search me. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me, God. Know my anxious thoughts. God, point out anything in me that offends you. Horrifying to think, but completely worth it. And then he doesn't stop there. He says, and God, lead me. Lead me along the path of everlasting life. That's what comes from these things because of what Jesus has done for us. So the next thing you do is you invite Jesus, and I added a word that's not in your notes, into all of your experience. God, I'm here today. I've put everything aside. No one's going to bug me. I'm giving you, I know it sounds like not enough, but 5 minutes. It's hard. God, it's possible that what's going to come up, I need you. I'm praying this prayer, search me, know me, bring it out. Man, some of this stuff is killing me. I'm lying to myself. Some of it's nastiness, darkness. I need your light there. Struggling, God. You see the relationship. You see the brokenness and hurt. You see the anger. Whatever it is, God, I'm coming to you because I got nowhere to go. And I'm giving you space to point out those things that are destroying me. And it's not because you hate me. I'm trying to learn that, God. It is because you love me. I don't get that. Sometimes I don't believe it, God. But here I am. You invite Jesus into all of that. Clear up my life, Lord. It is just a mess right now. It looks like sewage. I can't believe you would want to be here with me right now. Invite him into all of that. I know it's horrifying. It is worth it. And then be present and listen. Solitude can provide a shelter from the noise, a distraction that everyone is looking for you. Be with God. Listen to him and what your soul is saying. Be aware and attentive to yourself and God. All right. It's 40 minutes. We can still make it out in a few minutes to the restaurants before any other church. That's our goal, right? Ron, we got an appointment for Mother's Day, man. I came. Mom begged me to come, and I'm here. I did not want some hour-long sermon. Tough. It's Ron's up this week, all right? Not. In your notes, get them out, look at the end. Psalm 46:10, it's up there. I was going to do 5 minutes each line. You're like, you're killing me. That would have put us here for, another hour. And I'm not going to have you close your eyes and try to figure it all out. This is one of the things that I've been just picking up, thinking about doing and practicing. This morning I woke up. I don't know why. I want to say it was God, but it could have also been some other random thing that I ate or did. I don't know. And this instantly came to mind because I'm like, well, I might as well just practice this. Maybe God will put me to sleep using his word. Sounds horrible, huh? But here's my idea. And this is done by others. I just added something to it. So when you go into some time, you know what? I'm going to create some space. And God, I'm going to take 5 minutes. You could do that. You could do 10 seconds on each line. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 seconds in a minute and 10? Come on, right? Or longer. And you start at the top, Psalm 46:10. We read it earlier, and you could think about the story and God showing up when it looked like it was just all over. And you start at the top and just read that line. In the solitude and silence of it. And it's easier to remember, Just put yourself right in that line. Be still and know that I am God. This morning when I did that, it was true. There was great thoughts about God coming up, and there's just some nastiness that comes up at 2:30 in the morning. God, you said, you saw what I just thought, man. I can't believe it. You know what I should do is just click on, watch some YouTube videos for about a half hour. Maybe that'll put me to sleep. That's what comes up. Be still and know that I am God. Are you there, God? Go to the next line after you give it a minute. Be still and know. God, I see myself. Why am I awake? I got to preach tomorrow. God, I wish I wouldn't have done that yesterday. Said that. Why am I thinking this right now? Be still. I can't, God. I got to do something, man. I got to get rid of this feeling. Anything's better than this right now, please. And that little middle piece, that be, I'd read it twice, just be. This is hard. I hate this. But then it feels like a reversal happens. Be, I got to start going the other way. Just be for a minute. Be with God. Do you feel God has abandoned you? No, I don't. I kind of talk to myself. I feel he's still here. He didn't run away. He saw some of my nastiness. He saw me trying. He knows that I wanted to click on the TV more than I wanted to spend time with him. He's still here. Be still. Sit in that for a minute. Man, God, you didn't leave me. I'm shocked. I'm very surprised, God, that you wouldn't abandon me at this moment. Be still and know. Wow. You know what? I think that one of the things is that I was thinking that God doesn't love me because of some of this, and I think he's actually loves me. This doesn't scare him that the pastor thought that, wanted to do that instead, or wow. Now be still and know that I am God. God, you are amazing. Wow. Father, today, we just, as the worship team comes, just help us to be still and know that you are God. Wherever we are at, whatever we are in, and even this simple practice we could use just for moments to work through, man, who we are really, come in our, just as we are to you. It's just amazing that we could do that. Help us to just slow down and get rid of distraction enough to hear you speak loudly. And as we work through that, it becomes clear. And as we go the other way, you become clearer. Your voice becomes louder. But I also recognize that the problem is that I need to do this often enough because I can step right back into that distraction right away. So help us. To be still and know that you are God. May each person this week find some creative time to give a little space to you, whatever that needs to look like. May those around us help us with that in a loving, grace-filled way. And if there is someone here today that does not follow and know you, Jesus, and it's the day for them to give their life to you, may they just simply surrender themselves, saying, here I am, receive your love and grace, and now begin to follow and learn, take on your yoke, and find rest for their souls. In Jesus' name, amen. If you'd stand with me, we're going to sing to wrap it up. We're here to pray with you if you need prayer. I'll come back and give you just a quick blessing to go. If you did give your life to Jesus today, would you please come up, let us know, or turn in a card, use our app, turn the card into the boxes, the giving boxes out there. Man, we'd love to know that. If you need help in any way walking through these things, please ask and know that you are loved today by God more than I can fully express. Let's sing, and then I'll give you a blessing to go.